Hello, people. Welcome back to the show. This is episode 67. And last week I turned the ripe old age of 30. And so for this episode, I thought I'd share some lessons I've learned recently over the past few years that I wish I knew at 20. Now, to be clear, I don't regret not knowing these things because, as I've said many times over the course of this podcast, we're always doing the best we can with the limited knowledge we have. But hopefully, this might help some of you out there who are trying to figure things out. Perhaps you feel a bit lost or unmotivated. Hopefully, these lessons help. So, here we go. Lesson 1 is music is the space between the notes. Now, that comes from French composer Claude Debussy. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. And basically, the reason that's there is I've recently learned that life cannot be a meaningful one without the space in between the notes. Now, in this analogy, I'm using the space between the notes as rest, as times where you're not being productive, times where you're not constantly planning and writing your to-do lists and getting after it and grinding. It's times when you're with loved ones, you're out with friends, you're having a drink, you're watching TV. All of these things are required to live a meaningful life. And that doesn't mean that the musical notes aren't important. The musical notes here are all of the ways in which you are productive. It's the planning, it's the exercise, it's the aiming up, it's the chasing after lofty goals. But if you're always doing that, then you're never enjoying the result of those musical notes. And in music, the actual musical notes wouldn't be nearly as beautiful, as meaningful, as pleasant to hear if you didn't have the space in between the notes. If it was just someone constantly playing notes, it would be a whole barrage, a big mess of noise. It's the space in between the notes that make it beautiful. And it's the same with life. If you never reward yourself, if you never stop and appreciate the life that you have and you don't rest, then all of the productive stuff, all of the aiming up is for nothing. Delayed gratification only works if you actually gratify yourself. And I've heard Chris Williamson, the Modern Wisdom host, and Dr. John Deloney in a podcast and a conversation they've had in which they say something along the lines of, if you've spent your whole life marshmallow testing your way through it, you've trained yourself to not want what you want, to delay your wants for later. But what happens when you do this to such an extent that you stop gratifying yourself altogether, continually sacrificing the present for this imagined future? And now, don't get me wrong, delayed gratification has its place. Kyle Eschenroder has spoken about this in an essay where he says, your wants will take you down the path of least resistance, but what you want will take you down the most meaningful one. Basically what he means by this is your surface level wants, your surface level desires will take you down the easiest path. Your surface level desires are, I want to eat junk food now. I want to watch TV now. I want to play video games now. I want to have a drink now. These are the easiest paths you can take, and it's the surface level desires. And you can act on them if you want, but if you keep doing that, it's going to lead to problems. But what you want, your higher order desires, as in, I want to be healthy, I want to be fit, I want to achieve goals. These aren't surface level desires because you don't really want to do these things. They're very difficult to do, but you want them. And so you take the path of most resistance. And what I'm saying is you need to balance those two paths, however that means for you to be healthy and productive. It's about balancing the productivity with rest, with the meaningful moments in your life. Because I don't know about you, but the most meaningful moments in my life are the time I spend with loved ones. But I know that those times wouldn't be nearly as meaningful if I wasn't working hard when I'm not with them, or when I'm not resting. That rest feels a whole lot better if I've been working beforehand. And so the space in between the notes is what's most important, and it's what most people who have this sort of mindset struggle with. They struggle with stopping. I certainly struggle with it, and it's only been recently that I've began to feel the benefit of stopping, of taking a rest. So lesson 2 is you are not who you think you are, but you are condemned to be who you think you are. Now, that comes from Sam Harris, and it's such a paradox. It comes from one of his small moments meditations, and the reason I put this in here is because the way in which you think, all the thoughts that pop into your head, you don't control them. They do pop into your head, and you realize this pretty quick when you begin meditating, when you start to notice the thoughts. The thoughts are just appearing without any control from you. But it's in meditating in which you can challenge these thoughts, and you can see yourself for what you truly are. You can see your experience for what it truly is. Now, I've maybe made a mistake there by saying you see who you truly are, because with meditation you're relinquishing this sense of self, but you're paying more attention to the experience. And the more you realize that the thoughts you have are just popping into your head, the more you realize how little control you have over them. And so when Sam Harris says you are not who you think you are, that's what he means, that you are not your thoughts. You're not identical to your thoughts. But when he says that you're condemned to be who you think you are, it's that you can't control your thoughts. And so you are constantly experiencing these thoughts that are popping into your head. Now, what does this mean in practice? It means that you can stop punishing yourself for the thoughts that you have. I've heard countless stories of people who feel guilt and shame over thoughts they have, and these thoughts they're uncontrollable. They're just popping into your head, and most of the time they're natural thoughts. And it doesn't mean that you're a bad person, and it doesn't mean that you are who you think you are in your head. These thoughts that pop into your head, these thoughts of you doing something bad, that doesn't mean that you are that person. You're only that person if you actually do whatever it is that you're thinking you're doing. And so you're not who you think you are, but you are, of course, condemned to be who you think you are. So take a step back and pay more attention to the thoughts that are popping into your head, because you don't control them. And yeah. So lesson 3 is you are loved in your anger. And that comes from coach and nervous system teacher Johnny Miller. And basically, the way that I'm viewing that quote is, Chris Williamson has spoken about this a lot, where he speaks about men, and of course this isn't all men and there's exceptions to the rule, but certainly for me, I relate to this, where you want to be told that you can be better, but at the same time you are enough now. Men feel tremendous responsibility, and they need to be told the right thing. And men are struggling a lot, and as much as times are moving in the right direction in terms of equality and such, but there's no doubt, no one can really deny that men are struggling. You just have to look at the suicide numbers to understand that. And on a societal level, men are being told conflicting things. They're being told to open up and to be more emotional, but then they're also being told to not be so angry. And look, anger is there's nothing inherently wrong with anger. It's more when someone's being aggressive to someone in their anger, but anger isn't a problematic emotion. And I think a lot of men just need to be told that they are loved in their anger, or they are loved in their emotional states. And they want to be told that they are enough now. And I just think that society, I think that men are told certain things, but a lot of the time it's unconscious, or a lot of the time it's just the messaging that they're being fed about how they should be and how they should think about their emotions, and how they shouldn't communicate their emotions. And as much as in some scenarios it might be down to the man to do something about that, a lot of the time it's society that's pushing this message to men. And men aren't going to feel that they can open up about these things unless they feel safe to do so, unless they know that they are loved in those emotions. And so if you're with a man, in a relationship with a man, if you're friends with a man, I don't know, if it's your dad, if it's your brother, if it's your son, that's one message that I think everyone really could be more explicit with, is that, and this could apply to anyone. It's not specifically down to men, but I think it's primarily a male problem that they struggle with articulating their emotions. One thing that we could all say to each other more is that you are loved in your anger, you are loved in your sadness, you are loved when you feel not enough, you are loved. And you are enough. And I think we've moved into this idea that you're perfect the way you are. This, well, maybe not for men, but a lot of messages are that you're perfect the way you are and you shouldn't change. And I just think if you're depressed or you're angry or you're emotional and someone says, "Oh, you're perfect the way you are, don't change," it's like, well, I need to change so that I don't feel this way often, or I don't feel this way all of the time. And so when someone says you're perfect the way you are, it's not helpful in most circumstances. But what is helpful is, I know that you want to be better, and you certainly can be better. Everyone can be better, but you are enough now, and you are loved now. Okay, lesson 4. Peace is not finding calmer seas, it's building a better boat. That comes from the song Better Boat, written by Travis Meadows and Liz Rose. Now, this relates to someone I've had previously on the show. I'll link that up here or here, somewhere in the corner. But Oliver Burkeman says, true security lies in the unrestrained embrace of insecurity, in the recognition that we never really stand on solid ground and never can. Now, life isn't suddenly going to be perfect. You're not suddenly going to have everything figured out. Your to-do list isn't going to be all ticks, at least not for long. Your washing basket isn't going to be empty for long. There's always going to be something to do. There's always going to be responsibilities that you need to bear. There's always going to be things to do. And peace doesn't come from doing everything all of the time. It comes from acknowledging that you can't do everything all of the time and accepting that fact. And It's in what you choose not to do. This was such a big thing, and it was Oliver Burkeman's book. And speaking to Oliver himself, that it just had such a profound impact on me. It just felt like I was being spoken to personally. We try so hard to do everything. We feel like when we're aiming up, that our to-do list needs to be massive and that we need to do everything on it. But true wisdom and true productivity and true effectiveness comes in realizing that you can't do everything and choosing the right things to actually do. We need to stop trying to live life and instead let life happen to us every once in a while. And it's true, like you feel better when you're doing things. One of the best cures I've found for anxiety is action. It's you feel anxious about something, well, act to relinquish that anxiety. What is it you're anxious about? You're anxious about public speaking. Well, then act to relinquish that anxiety the best you can. The way to do that is to practice whatever it is that you're speaking about. So it's certainly useful to act, and it's certainly useful to try and wrangle life to work for us. But that's a losing battle if you keep doing that. You need to, at times, just let life happen. You need to acknowledge how you're feeling, physically, emotionally. Do you feel up to being productive? Do you feel up to exercising? The true wisdom comes from acknowledging when you need to stop. True wisdom comes from realizing that you're not going to get everything done. And I wish I knew this. I wish I knew this sooner. Oliver Burkeman also says, you can't do everything, you can't have everything, you can't be everything. Accepting that is the beginning of freedom. And yeah, that just summarizes this lesson so well. Once you accept that you can't have everything, the desire to have everything will dissipate. It won't dissipate for long. Of course, you're going to slip into bad habits, and you're going to be scrolling on eBay or Vinted or shopping, whatever it is. But as soon as you realize that you can't have everything and accept that you can't have everything and appreciate what you do have, that sort of desire dissipates every once in a while. As soon as you realize that you can't do everything, the pressure you feel to do everything will suddenly dissipate. And again, it won't dissipate for long. You'll slip into bad habits. You'll keep trying to do everything. But yeah, it's that acknowledgement that you're never going to get everything done. You're never going to have everything that you want to have. And you're never going to be on top of everything. Once you realize that, there is tremendous freedom and relief in that, especially for those sorts of ambitious, high-achieving types. And it goes the same with making plans. If someone asks you to do something, if someone asks you to go to an event, if someone asks you to speak somewhere, I don't know what it is, but the freedom also comes in learning how to say no to things. Like Tim Ferriss has this quote where he says, if I'm not saying hell yeah about something, then I say no. Your life is short in relative terms, and so you shouldn't spend it doing something that you're not very excited about. You shouldn't be trading your time, your precious free time, for doing something that you don't really want to do. Now, of course, there's going to be things that you have to do that you don't particularly want to do or you're not excited about, but any time that you can, examine the invitation for its importance and examine this invitation for how excited you are about it. If you're not excited about something and you can say no and it's not something you need to do, say no. There's so much freedom in saying no. And I've got one more thing pertaining to this lesson, and it comes from, hold on, I'm going to have to look this up. Okay, sorry, I found it. This practical method, was popularized by McKeown. and his book Essentialism, and it's called the 1-3-5 structure, and it's used in task planning. I've been using this for the last maybe 6 months, and it has really helped with prioritizing the things that I definitely should do and saying no to the things that I'm not going to have time for, or the things that aren't as important to do. It really helps me take a rest and know that I've done enough and that the day's been a success if I do certain things, and it means that I can take a rest. It allows me to give myself permission to stop, and I know that's not healthy. I should just be able to do that anyway, but it really does help with that. And I think as the months go by, I'm probably going to come to a place where I make that decision based on how I'm feeling physically or emotionally. If I'm feeling tired, then I will stop. But for now, this productivity structure really helps with triggering that response, triggering the response of stopping and taking a rest and relaxing. So basically, the structure is called the 1-3-5 structure, or the 1-3-5 framework, and it's a way of planning your day based on priority. And it basically goes that you write down one essential intent for the day. That means one thing that if you only did this thing, the day would be a success. So, like, if I'm working, that's the essential intent. If I go to work and I stay at work and I do the full shift, then the day's been a success and everything else is a bonus. So if I'm not working, then it could be something to do with the podcast. It forces you to prioritize and to examine what the most important things are in your life. The 3 is your 3 should haves, or your kind of medium tasks, the tasks that if you get the essential intent done and you still have energy, these are the next 3 things you should do. And again, that forces you to prioritize things. It forces you to examine what's next in your priorities. So if I'm on my day off, my essential intent could be recording this podcast. My 3 should-haves could be exercising, some housework, and getting ready for the next day. It could be anything. It could be big or small. The important thing is that you are prioritizing the right things and you're saying no to certain things, because then you're going to write down 5 nice-to-haves, or like easier tasks that if you have the time, it would be nice to get these things done, but they're not essential. So if you get your essential task done, that makes the day a success, and you get the should-haves done, then you're going to move on to these 5 nice-to-haves. And for me, that could be practicing guitar. It could be, I don't know, something where, like, housework things that you kind of put off that would be nice to do. So like hoovering, or, I don't know, cleaning the coffee machine or something like that. These things don't have to get done. If you don't get them all done, that's fine. If you don't get any of them done, that's fine. You've still got your essential intent, and if you've got the 3 should-haves done, then you're doing pretty well. And I write this all down on Notion. I just duplicate the page and then write down for the day what I'm doing, and it really helps. It really helps me be a bit more compassionate towards myself, because I used to have long to-do lists that weren't organized in terms of priority, and I would tell myself I need to get it all done, and it was a failure if I didn't get it all done. And the benefit of this is it triggers this sort of self-compassionate way in me, in which I can say, I've got my essential intent done. The day is already a success, so I can just rest. Or if I get all of those things done, which is a lot shorter than my previous to-do list, I can call my day a success. I'm happy I've got that stuff done, and I can relax. It's great. So if you are an ambitious, productive, self-punishing person who is constantly trying to whip themselves to be productive, this really helps with prioritization, and it really helps with acknowledging the things that aren't as important to do, so that you're not always trying to get everything done, and you're not always trying to get on top of everything. You're acknowledging that you can't get on top of everything, which relates to the previous lesson. You can't get on top of everything, so here's what you should probably do now to make the day a success. And finally, lesson 5 is this rules. Now, I just watched a video with Zach Tallender, who's a country musician and singer, where he told this story, and he had a picture to go with it, of going to Nando's chicken restaurant with a friend, and they'd ordered their chicken, and his friend had went, and his friend was Chris Williamson, by the way. So Chris Williamson had went to the juice dispensing machine and pressed a button, and his juice came out, and Zach Tallender basically thought, and he said, "Oh, this rules. They're out for this," and Nando's isn't a particularly expensive restaurant, but they're out. They're going to get food brought to them. His friend has just went and pressed a button, and magical, tasty juices come out, and he gets to spend time with his best friend. This rules. And I really actually, like, that really had an effect on me, and I've been constantly saying this rules ever since I watched that. And this all comes down to just being grateful for what you have and appreciating the life that you have. Because we're so lucky. Like, if you're watching this podcast, you're so lucky. You're watching on a phone, or you're watching on an iPad or a computer. Like, that's incredible that you're watching that. That rules. And so this rule comes, ironically, this rule comes from that. And the way I've been doing this practically is whenever I have the thought, this rules, whenever I feel gratitude for my life, I take a picture on my phone. It could be anything. It doesn't have to be anything grand. It doesn't have to, and it's not, this isn't for posting. You don't have to post it on social media. You can do, but you don't have to. I just then put all these photos into an album called This Rules. And since I've started doing this, the amount of photos I've actually put into that album is incredible, and it just shows how much I should be grateful for, how much actually rules in my life, because we have this habit of focusing on what we don't have and focusing on how our life is going wrong, and we never, or very seldom, pay attention to what's going right, what actually rules in our life. And so my album is a massive mix. There's pictures of family. There's pictures of just like the street from like I'm walking home after working a 4-hour shift. I've just went to therapy, which, as much as people might think, oh, your life must be going terribly if you're going to therapy, it's not. And I'm lucky. I'm so lucky that I get to go to therapy, that I can actually go and speak to someone about anything that I'm thinking about. And then I'm walking home, and I've got the whole week off because it's my 30th, and I know I get to spend time with loved ones. That rules. Right now, this rules. You know what? Like, this rules now. This absolutely rules that there. The fact that this morning, of course I'm going to have to go to work, but I get to wake up. I've got this lovely iPad, and granted, I don't have like this massive production setup. Clearly, I'm in the spare room in my flat. It's pretty small. I've got this kind of cheap teleprompter here, a cheap ring light. I don't have a team. I'm not making any money off this, so it's easy to think about and concentrate on what's not going right. But I'm filming this on like a great camera with my iPad, and I happen to have the mindset that wants to do these things. I'm lucky enough to have this ambitious mindset to want to do this. This rules. This is a this rules moment. And so whenever you feel yourself feeling grateful for your life, whenever you think of this rules, snap a picture and then put it in an album called This Rules. And if ever you feel like life's not going right, or life is going wrong, look at your album and look through them and remember the story from each photo. Oh, this is a day that I did such and such, and that ruled, and it's amazing that I get to do that. Of course, it takes a bit of practice. You're not going to always be thinking this rules if you're the type of person that's always concentrating on what you don't have. But with practice, you will. You'll start thinking this rules more often, and you'll realize how often you actually say it, and how that is proportionate to how much your life actually rules. Because a lot, like, so many of us are extremely lucky, and of course so many of us are unfortunately unlucky or have fallen on bad times through no fault of their own. But it does us no good to concentrate on what's going wrong if there's a lot that's going right. So this rules. Okay, that's it. That's the five or six lessons. I'll count them in the edit. But there's the lessons that I wish I knew at 20 that I now know at 30. Again, I don't regret not knowing these. My 20s were great. It was a lot of time spent learning, clearly. And if my 20s are anything to go by, I'm very much looking forward to my 30s. I know there's a hell of a lot more I want to learn, and I want to be wiser, and I want to keep living this meaningful life. That rules. And I want this podcast to grow. And I'm very excited for that to happen. And I really see my 30s as the decade where that happens. Hopefully it's in the first half of that decade where it happens. But the moral here, the main lesson that I've learned practically is to balance productivity and ambition with taking a step back, because they're both important. Don't think that because you're striving for more that is a bad thing, that you're acknowledging that you don't have anything now all the time. Just make sure you're balancing it with being grateful for what you do have, and taking a step back and appreciating your loved ones and resting, because that's just as important as striving for more. But of course, that is a struggle, and of course the answer lies in the struggle. So keep on struggling.